All right. Looks like we are live. I want to say ETM Hotep, which is a phrase that means welcome in peace, roughly welcome in peace. Welcome everyone who's viewing live or who will be viewing this video from the archives to Divine Words Wednesdays with the Seshew Medew Netcher. And the Seshew Medew Netcher, we are a group of a membership of like-minded individuals with aspirations of being true or loyal scribes of divine words, which is mDw Netcher. We embrace the importance of learning the languages of Kemet as a means to enter the world of Ancient Kemet and have the meeting of the minds with the illustrious civilization, society, culture, and people responsible for contributing so much to the world, whether realized or not. And that's very important because a lot of us, we glorify Kemet, or we see the attraction to Kemet or ancient Egypt, and we are mystified by what's left behind, the pyramids, the Sphinx, and so on and so forth. But in order to really understand what was going on in the minds of the people, in order for that civilization to thrive and do so well as it's done, then it's important for us to get into the minds of the people. And the way to do that is to get into the language, because language is the DNA of culture. So this is why importance and focus is placed on the language. And this is the job of the Seshew Medew Netcher. All right. Our purpose for doing these hangouts or Divine Words Wednesdays is to give examples of how Sesh Medew Netcher, which is the indigenous word or phrase for what's being called a hieroglyphic script. So our purpose is to give examples on how Sesh Medew Netcher is translated, and in doing so, we also address the fact that Sesh Medew Netcher, the script, has been deciphered, because we have claims out there where the language has not been deciphered. So that's addressed, and then two, the methods for doing so. So we're going to show you the methods on translations, and then the fact that we're able to do it is going to demonstrate that with time, discipline, and patience, anyone can do it, because we're not anyone special. We're not better than any other people. It's just a matter of putting in and dedicating the time and having the discipline and patience to learn, to actually sit down and learn, be guided, or learn on your own. Whether you learn on your own with credible materials, or through courses and classes, and we offer classes on the website mdw-nTr.com, which we'll see at the conclusion of this hangout and presentation. So that's our purpose. All right, translation methods. Now there's a standard method on translations, and this is something that everyone goes through, whether you are an expert or a novice. You're just coming in contact with this information. There are four main steps that everyone must follow, and step one would be to determine the directions in which the signs are to be read. As you know, the so-called hieroglyphic signs, or Sesh Medew Netcher, are pictorial in nature. And these picture-like signs are written facing in different directions. And to just the average onlooker, it just looks like beautiful artwork. So step one, you have to determine the direction in which the signs are to be read. And there's ways on how to go about doing that, which we'll go over. Step two is to identify and document each individual sign. And by that, you have to identify what the sign is and what it stands for and how it functions, and we'll be going over that as well. Step three is to then take what you've done in step two and group the signs into words, and these words can then be searched in dictionaries, and we're going to go over that as well. Step four, after doing step three, step four is to come up with a sensible translation. All right, so for today's Divine Words Wednesdays, we'll be dealing with this particular image. and it's very short. It's a small artifact, and it's a single column, and it's something that we can discuss in a short amount of time just to get the points across. And here it is again, the same object, but on the right hand side you have sort of magnified version so you can see the signs a little bit more clear. All right. And also with the group, since I'm doing the presentation, I can't see all who was on the group, but maybe everyone else who's here, you can kind of introduce yourself and let your voice be heard before we actually get into doing the actual translation.
EET this is Damo. Go by Damien Everly on Facebook, YouTube. I want to welcome everybody that's tuning in to witness us doing this live. Just welcome in peace. Be in the right mind frame. We're going to teach you the methodology, how to get this done. Hotep.
ETM Hotep, Duau, Rini, Kofi, Paisai. Thank you for watching, and let's get it in.
Hotep, ETM Hotep. This is Robert, also known as June. Just wanted to say hi. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hotep.
Hotep, this is Satepara Mariaman. Same name on Facebook. We just here doing what we normally do. Transliteration Wednesdays, Divine Word Wednesdays. So every Wednesday, be expecting us to be coming with something new. And next, I'm going to pass it over to the Senet.
Hotep, my name is Tonika, and I'm glad to be here. And we're just here doing what we do on a regular, but today you get to watch us do what we do, and hope you guys can, take something out of it. If you feel that is something that you want to do, like it's been said before, you can, there's courses that are offered on mdw-nTr.com. So, yeah. So I hope you guys enjoy whether you're watching it live right now or for those who are going to be watching it later. Hotep.
All right, good enough, good enough. All right, now before we actually get into translating this piece, I wanted to show the piece. So this is a very single column artifact and inscription. So I'm going to back up a little bit and go back to the translation methods, because it's all about methodology, having correct method in doing it. All right, so as we can see, there's 4 main steps. Step 1 is to determine the direction in which the signs are to be read. So if we look at the artifact again, let's say Son Kofi, maybe you can expound on this, but as far as step 1 is concerned, in determining the direction in which the signs are to be read, what are the ways in which we do that? And I'm showing the actual artifact again, so maybe you can direct me with my cursor and just kind of let the viewers know how do we actually perform step 1.
We're going to be reading that. Determine how to read it is reading which direction the signs is facing, and on this end we'll be reading it from left to right, vertical. So we'll be starting from the right, from the left and going to the right. So the first sign we have there is the sedge plant. So that's where we will be starting it.
Okay, you mean from right to left? The sedge is on the right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the sedge. So we're gonna start from the sedge. plant and work our way to the left, and then it's down as well. Okay. All right. So that would be step 1. So okay, Iker, Dua. So basically, so step 1, in determining direction, that's the very basic step, and that's the first thing that we have to do, because the signs and different inscriptions and different temples, different coffin texts, and so on and so forth, the signs can be written either from right to left, left to right, and then you have them in rows or you have them in columns, such as what we're looking at right now. This particular artifact is in a column, and it's from right to left, as Kofi said. All right, so that's good. And then step 2. So once you determine that, that's easy. That's pretty much easiest step. All right, step 2 is to identify and document each of these individual signs. So here we have a number of signs here, and I do want to say that by the time a person, anyone, comes to the point where they're sitting down and transliterating and translating artifacts and inscriptions, there is a set of prerequisite information that you should have already have learned, become proficient in or be competent in. So there are a lot of things that we are not going to discuss in this hangout or presentation that we have learned, in previous, through our studies and things like that. And a couple of those things is the difference, the kind of signs, how they function, the different types of signs, how they function, the difference between a phonogram versus an ideogram, what are determinatives, and things like that. So a lot of that information is something that you learn in the process of studying this information. So, we're basically just, for this particular hangout, we're just showing you, how it's done and the fact that it can be done. And hopefully it encourages anyone who's watching, to get involved if you're interested. So going back to step 2, in identifying and documenting each individual sign, Son Demo, can you explain to the viewers or listeners how do we go about identifying the signs, and what do we use in doing so?
To you, Dua. All right, I'm gonna refer everyone so you can have something to go back to and look at something tangible. If you go to mdw-nTr.com, go down to the resources, we have a sign list. When you go to the sign list, it'll go to explain to you about the sign list that was organized by Sir Alan Gardner in his Egyptian grammar. Now it's in 26 main categories. In layman's terms, what you're going to look at, it's in a category. You see some people, if it looks like a man, it's probably in this man and his occupation category. If you're looking at an arm, a leg, an eye, you look through all these 26 categories, it's probably going to be parts of a human body. Different birds. You also have animals. So everything you see visually has been broken down and compiled into this sign list. And even at the bottom, some signs that you may not recognize, and you'll look at it, you say, okay, it looks like a low and broad sign. It also has a category for that. It may look like a low, narrow sign. They have a category for that. So this is something you can reference, kind of like detective work. You will go into this sign list and find out what it is and get the information you can from it. So if we go into what we're dissecting right now and looking at, first thing we see is a plant. Now that plant, I'm looking at it and it looks like a plant. The way it looks, you can see the size on it, the way it's wilted over. So we'll go into the plants and see if we can find it. So let's go to trees and plants, which is M. Now a lot of people are getting well versed into this, where they'll flip it off the top of their brain and they'll know what category it's in. And the more you study it, the more you get to knowing exactly right off top what category it's in. So we'll go to trees and plants. Now, as I pull up trees and plants, it'll start out with the M1 because that's the category we're in. It'll give you the Gardner code. It'll show you a sign. It'll give you the description of the sign and also the function, what it's functioning as. And as I was explaining to you, that's what you're knowing whether it's a logogram, a determinative, a phonogram. But as you get more into it, you'll get to distinguish and know what those are as individuals. But we're looking for a sedge plant right now. I'm calling it sedge because I'm already knowing it is, but right now in your mind, you're just looking for that sign. So let's go find that sign that's wilted over. Okay, I'm moving down M1. Let's go all the way down. Okay, we're getting, I see a lot of plants, but nothing like what we saw. Okay, we're still looking. Huh. All right, there it is. M23 is the code they're giving for it. That's the plant, and they're calling it sedge, which I was giving to you already, and they're giving you the functions over here. As a logogram is sweat, SWT, sedge. As a phonogram, you would write that as a capital S and W. In the group writing, they're showing you different examples. So that's how you would look that up. Okay, let's go look for another one. The second one I see there, that sign is.
It looks like a pyramid.
Yeah, it does look like a pyramid. A pyramid inside of a pyramid. Domestic, no. Let's go check loaves and cakes. Because I remember sign. And a lot of times, like I said, you'll become more and more familiar with this, and you'll begin to know which kind of categories to go search in. There it is. X8. Conical loaf. They're giving you the description, and they're also giving you the function of it. Well, so far we have the sedge plant, and we found the conical loaf. Now let's go back and find the one that's right, looking like a table with a lump in the middle of it. That's what it looks like on first impression. And I've seen that before, and this is the category I've seen it in. Temple, furniture, and sacred emblems. Oh, just so happened, just like one right up at the top. But that's not what we're looking for, because we want the code, the sign, the description of the sign, as well as the function. And here we have it, R4. What are they calling it? Loaf on a mat. Logogram, hotel, altar. Phonogram, hotel, loaf on a mat. That's when you get into your studies, you start understanding that's the offering. That's when people get into the dialogue about hotel. But what does that mean? It doesn't mean piss. What is an offering? You know, that's when you get into that argument. So far we have those three down. We found the sedge plant, we found the conical loaf, and we gathered the information to that. And from there you will go all the way down. You start finding everything. Next you see the eye. That's like an eye. On down, I'm just going off some of my formal teachings. I see a seat. And I'm seeing something called a lotus plant. So we will gather all these individual signs together, and then we'll proceed to the next step once we have all the information we have. So this is kind of a really important step. You have to get all the information you can. How does it function as this? How does it function as a logogram? How does it function as a phonogram? Because once you get all your information, then you can proceed into the next step. And that's the importance of the sign list.
Okay, Iker, excellent, good. Dua for that. Yeah, and like you said, this step 2. Go back to the steps. Step 2, if you all can see my screen, is identifying and documenting each individual sign. So in essence, step 2 is a data collecting step. It's where you gotta identify, as you said, CSI detective work. You have to scope out and identify each and every sign, and then document it. And what you're documenting is exactly what you said. You want to document the Gardner code. You want to document how the sign functions, or the possibility of how the sign functions. And something that we learn and that we know is that every single sign in Sesh Medew Netcher, or the hieroglyphs, can function in one of 3 different ways in any given word. And it can either function as a phonogram, which are sound signs, phonetically representing the sound, or as a ideogram / logogram, or as a determinative. Those are the 3 possible functions that any given sign can function as in a particular word. Now I say it that way because the signs don't function in multiple ways in a single word. In other words, one sign can't have multiple functions in the same word at the same time, but a particular sign may function differently depending on the word that is found in. Okay, so that's important to know, and that's something that we know and we learn. So that covers step 2. And in step 2, now here we see on the right hand side, we see a little bit more magnified picture of all the signs. So you will go through step 2 and identify every single sign. And as some Kofi already said, in step 1, we've already determined direction. So the first sign you come in contact with, which will be the sedge, and then we have this conical loaf, and then we have the Hotep symbol, or the mat offering, the eye, the seat, and then the lotus, the tall lotus stalk, and so on and so forth. You go all the way down, identify every single sign. Now what happens is, the more and more that you do this, and that you study this, and you get involved, a lot of these signs you're no longer going to have to look them up, because you'll have them memorized. So for some people who have been doing this for a long time, the step 2 becomes shorter and shorter. You know, step 2 will start shrinking, and that's a good sign of growth in your development of understanding the language. So for a lot of us, we can particularly on the fly, we can particularly identify most, if not all, of these signs. But as a beginner, you will definitely have to look them up and identify, and that's the step, as explained very well by son Damo, brother Damo. All right, so now after you do that step, you take your documentation, and this is what your documentation would roughly look like. Okay, so here you see the identity of all of the signs involved with the picture, with the image that we are actually working with. So now you wouldn't have to write down all of this information. Obviously, you wouldn't have a need to redraw the image unless you just wanted to. But the things to definitely make note of is the Gardner code, and then how the sign functions. So basically the first column and then the fourth column is what you definitely want to note or document on paper when you're going through this process. So here you see all of the signs being identified, and the Gardner codes, and then how they can possibly function. Okay, so in essence, step 2 is your transliteration step, because you're converting the sign into its transliterated format, and this is what you see. And there are 2 main transliteration systems that are used. One is the manual decodage system, and the other one is what we call the diacritic system. And the diacritic, the word diacritic the diacritics are those little small marks you see on letters. For example, I can't blow this up, but if you can see where my cursor is, like this D here has a line under it. This H in this word, if you can see my cursor, has a dot under it. Those are diacritic marks. And on social media and emails and things like that, our keyboards are not designed to readily just type in these characters with dots around it. So there's another system that was developed called manual decodage, which is case sensitive. So instead of having an H with a dot under it, it now becomes a capital H. So a lot of times, if you're on social media, or if you've seen us type things on Facebook, you'll see us use the manual decodage transliteration system, where it's case sensitive. You'll see some letters are capitalized and some are not, and that's important. It's there for a reason. All right. And I also want to make it clear that transliteration is a science. So any 2 people, if I go back to the picture, any 2 or more people looking at this inscription, when they go to transliterate it, everyone should have an identical transliteration of it, with depending on what system you use. So any 2 people using the same system, whether it's diacritic, then it should look exactly alike. If 2 or more people are using manual decodage, their transliteration should look exactly alike. But now when it comes to an actual translation, that's where you get the small variations between people translating, because translations are not an exact one-for-one science. because there's very rare that you'll find a one-for-one correspondence coming from a source language into a target language. And because of that, some people may have filler words, you know, instead of saying, for example, Lord of the two lands, someone may say master of the two lands. A next person may say, you know, possessor of the two lands. You know, but it'll generally mean the same thing, but the choice of words will be slightly different. All right, and that's perfectly acceptable. All right, so I just wanted to make that clear. So now moving on, I'm going back to step 3. So now we're at step 3. At step 3, what you're doing in step 3 is grouping the signs into words so that they can be searched in dictionaries. So, Son Satep, Brother Satep, if you can just explain what dictionary that you use or that is recommended to use and why, and then we can get into actually if you can show some examples, and I'll go back to the picture.
All right. Let me share my screen. When it comes to dictionaries, there's a couple of them out there. You have Bud, you have Faulkner, and you have Vigus. Me personally, I like to use the Vigus. When I can't find something, you have the Waterbach too, but you have to read German to be able to get that. So, me personally, I like to use the Vigus, which is on my screen right now. And they have 2 versions of it. They have 2012 and 2015. This one right here is the 2012 version, as you can see. So we'll go with that one, and I can look up the word Apd Ssr. And me personally, I like to use manual decodage when I look it up. But you can use Gardner codes. If you want to get it accurate and precise, use the Gardner codes. But me personally, I like using manual decodage because I can look and see through the Gardner codes, and I can give you an example of it. So let's see, we're looking up Apd Ssr. So I'll type capital HTP, and I will type DI, space DI, enter, and then I have 4 different versions of it, and I know it's going to be the second one because it shows me the Gardner codes right here. It says M23, X1, and R4. So I click on that, and this is what we have right here. Apd Ssr. Now, in this instance, the raised bread loaf isn't in there. And the raised bread loaf is kind of, what they call that, a weak consonant. Am I right, Saber?
Phonetic complement.
Phonetic complement, sorry. It's a phonetic complement to it. So, I mean, sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't there. If it isn't there, it's nothing to stress about. It's still Hotep. And sometimes you'll have it all the way spelled out with the stool there, with the P at the bottom. So, there's nothing to stress about if you can't find it, as long as it's saying an offering that the king gives. So I like to look mines up via manual decodage, but you can look it up Gardner code to get the precise ones. As you can see down here at the bottom of my screen, it's another variation of it. Like I said, you have the raised bread loaf and the stool, and it's the same thing. It's just a phonetic complement, like Sinet said. Was there any other word I needed to look up, Saber?
Okay, so you looked up Apd Ssr. How about the next word with the I? Because remember, at this point, all you would normally have would be what you have from step 2. So now you have the next set of signs will be the I and then the throne. So maybe you could possibly look that up.
So we have the I and the throne. So me being a student for over a year now, I know the I and the throne, that's basically saying Wesir. So I will type in WSIR, manual decodage, hit enter, and we have different variations of it. And I like to go through the dictionary. This is the reason why I do it this way. So I click the first one there, D4, and then you see at the bottom of my screen it has Q1. So here's the one that's exactly on there right now. and it's saying Osiris, Wesir, or Osiris, or Ssr. And that's basically how it's done. I mean, I could look up, what's the next symbol that we have?
The next symbol, let me actually go back. So what you're, the next symbol, if you can see, well, I guess the view is on your screen, which is fine. But the next symbol would be, based on what you have from step 2, you would have the next sign would be M12, which is a lotus plant. And the transliteration given for that would be an X, capital A.
Okay. So we would go back to the search bar, and we would type in lowercase x and capital A, hit enter, and we have different variations of it. I'm gonna I know that I will read through it because like I said, I like to look through the dictionary because you find out different words just by looking through it. But for sake of time, I know we're dealing with the number, so I would go down to this one here, and boom, there it is, 1,000. Now, to save you some time when you're transliterating stuff, I would write the page number down that you found the glyph on, the exact glyph on, to save you time, just in case when you're transliterating, and then when you go to the step 4, which we're going to get to in a second, I would write the page number down where you found that transliteration at, because it'll save you time instead of going through the process how I just did it. But that's just the way I like to do it, because I find extra words in there that I might need later on when I'm studying the glyphs. So, but this is the particular glyph that we're looking at right here, and it's 1,000 or numerous. It can be used as an adjective and a noun, and it's the Gardner code on it is M12.
Okay. Well, excellent, Iker. All right. Let me go back to the picture. All right. Okay, good. Dua. And I'm not sure if my screen is back on, but I'm showing the artifact again. So basically, for the sake of time, I know you're not going to go through all of the different words, but that's basically how the process is done. You take what you've written in step 2, which is what I'm showing on the screen, which is the identity of all the different signs that are on the particular object that you're working with, and then you proceed to march through them and group them together. Now, as far as step 3 is concerned, as I said, for the sake of the hangout and this presentation, there's a lot of information that you normally would have already learned and studied and everything, and we're not presenting this presentation as a course, to teach the ins and outs, but it's just to give an overview of how it's done and the fact that it can be done as expressed in the purpose. But in doing so, in grouping these signs into words, you would have already known how to do that, and one of the main helpers on how to do that would be to be familiar with what's called determinatives. And determinatives usually come at the end of words, and they help determine the meaning of the preceding signs or the signs that come before that. So once you learn that, then you'll be able to parse what we call parsing the signs. So right now it just looks like a whole bunch of individual signs on a sheet of paper if you were to write this out. But knowing what you know at this point in time, you would then be able to group the signs into their appropriate words and look them up as Senebimni has just done for the first 3 or so. The first 3, well, actually more than 3 words, but the first 3 instances. So this is how the transliteration would turn out, where we have Hotep di Nasut, which is what he looked up, and it meant an offering in which the king gives, and then Wesir, which is Osiris, as you saw in the dictionary, and then Kha, which is the number for 1,000, or it can be numerous. But then you would keep going and look up the rest of the words. But for the sake of time, we're not going to go through the dictionary and look up each and every word. But that's basically how it's done. Now, something that we all run into, whether you're a novice or an expert, sometimes it can be difficult in parsing these words. So there are times where you have to jump back and forth from what you think are sign groupings into words than what you can find in a dictionary, because sometimes you can't find what you think that you've written down in a dictionary exactly that way. So then you have to make some adjustments. So step 3 becomes a sort of like a back and forth, and you have to keep an open mind. You have to be open to the different possibilities. You can't be rigid and stiff. You know, for example, just like Sonsatep said, in some cases there are signs that are omitted in certain inscriptions, and that's because of what the scribes did or felt was needed, and a lot of importance was placed on aesthetics. For example, if instead of making something look bad on a wall, they may abbreviate a word, or what's called graphic transposition, which is a whole nother issue. But Sonet Tonica, could you speak a little bit about phonetic complements? Because I know you mentioned phonetic complements when the word Hotep was being looked up. So what are phonetic complements?
Usually with the phonetic complements, and I will take the word or the glyph for Hotep as an example. Usually you'd have, and this is why it's important to to memorize your monoliterals, like it has been stated before. Phonetic complements will help you narrow down what a word might mean. For example, with the glyph for Hotep, where you have the mat with the bread on top, looking at it, you might and probably even looking through the sign list, you might come through different signs that might look like that might look like the offering table, and it's not. And when you see the offering table, for example, most of the time it will appear with the raised bread loaf, like you saw on the dictionary. That's the type we're showing. And it could have that, and it could have the mat or the P on it. And that would actually help you narrow down that it is the word Hotep, because then you would see the raised bread loaf would be for the word T, and the mat would be P. So then it will help you narrow down what the word, what sign you're looking at, in case you're not sure what sign you're looking at. So it kind of gives you clues to what the sign might mean or should mean.
Okay.
I hope that is understandable.
Yeah, excellent, Iker. All right, good, Dua. Exactly, and again, that's something that you know every one of us learn in the course of learning how to actually do this work. So again, this is not designed to give an actual lesson, but it's just to touch on some basic points. So I appreciate that because that's important. It will become important to those who are just starting out. So now we are back. Let me back up. So that will be step 3, and then step 4 is to come up with a sensible translation. So basically, from step 3, you're going to write down all of the possible meanings. So to back up to step 2, when you're performing step 2, which is to identify and document each individual sign, the tool that you're going to use is, as Sondemo used, was a sign list. So in step 2, you're going to use a sign list to help you out. In step 3, as Son Satep or Brother Satep used, his tool was the dictionary. So step 2, you're going to use a sign list, and step 2, you're going to have a dictionary by your side. All right. So now, by the time you come to step 4, you would have written down all of the possible dictionary meanings of the different words that you have in step 3. So step 4, in coming up with a sensible translation, and this is what I said earlier, that this may vary from person to person slightly, but it should all be in the same. It should all be very, very similar to each other, but it may not be the exact same wording from person to person. So, and based on what we have so far, this will be the end result of the transliteration. And for the sake of time, we didn't look up all of these words. But in the end, this is what Son Satep had found in the dictionary. In case the screen wasn't seen clearly before. So here we have Hotep D Nasut, which was the first grouping of signs together. And this is the dictionary entry in the Vigus dictionary given by Setep. So it means an offering the king gives. And here you see the Gardner codes for that as well. And then we have the next word that was looked up, which was Wesir. And you have this is Osiris. And the part of speech was a noun for divinity or divine. And then the Gardner codes for that. And then the next word was Ka, which means 1,000 or numerous, and so on. So you would do that for all of the words. And then from there, you would come up with a sensible translation. And this would complete what you're doing. So, Son Kofi, if you're still there, if you can just give us the full translation of the object, and I have it on my slide. If you could just give that to us. All right, I can't see, so I'm not sure if Son Kofi is still there. So
Yeah,
anyone?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
here. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I thought I was on. I still had my mic muted. A royal offering of Wesir, 1,000 breads, beer, oxen, fowl, alabasters, and clothing for the honored ones before the great God. Senebimni, who is true of voice, victorious.
Okay, excellent. So let me go back to the actual image. So this is what we're looking at, and this is what the inscriptions are actually saying. So now, you know, when you go through that process, if you were to go into a museum, or if you go to Egypt directly to Egypt and see these different artifacts, now you can have a little greater appreciation, and you're not just looking at a little, what would normally look like a little doll artifact. You know, you may not even know what it is. You're like, oh, and the first impression, you may see this as a doll. You're like, okay, maybe the ancient Egyptians had doll babies. Maybe this was a form of a doll baby given to a child. It's probably a child toy or whatever. But knowing the language and reading it and translating it and knowing what it says, now you can have a more accurate assessment of what this object is. And it's obviously a funerary object that is used, and it is an offering. You know, it has an offering formula written on it. And if I go back to the translation, it says, you know, a royal offering of Wesir. Now, well, yeah, I don't want to go too far and confuse things, but anyway, that's pretty much it, and that's pretty much how the process is done. Again, for the sake of time, we didn't go through every single sign identifying it, but here is the end result of what would be step 2. And then in step 3, this would be the end result of the entire inscription transliterated. And then step 4, this would be the translation. Now, again, transliterations, if I go back, this is an exact science. So anyone doing a transliteration using manual decodage, their transliteration should look identical to this. All right? But as far as translations, which is what you see here, this may vary slightly from person to person. So, for example, anybody on the panel, like, how would you translate it differently? If there's any word that you would swap out or change, if you can, if you could speak on that.
Said maybe for honored would revered be another choice. Is that
Yeah, that could be one, honored one,
imAxw?
because that's true. That would be a word, because it's pretty much synonymous with, you know, if you're honored, then you're being revered. You know, so that's a good example. But we know in English that those are synonyms, basically. And like I said, coming from it's very, very rare that you'll find an exact one-for-one correspondence coming from a source language into a target language. In this case, the source language being Ancient Kemet, or the ancient Egyptian language, coming into English. And there, and this goes for any language, even from English to Spanish, French to English, and so on and so forth. It's very rare that you're going to find an exact one-for-one. So, so that's a good example. Switching out honored for revered, the revered one, etc. Some people don't like to use the word God. So
Yeah,
instead
I was just finna say that when I done started using it, but I know most of the time I might have put the great divinity.
okay, yeah. So yeah, that's a good example
I'm
right
with you
there.
on that, Kofi.
Yeah, a lot of people they have a different opinion about the word God, so they'll use great divinity. Some people, and it's another thing too. Some people will leave certain words untranslated. So some instances you may see where it says the honored one before the great Netcher, where they don't even translate it, they just leave it as Netcher. So so those are possibilities. So you know what's another example? Okay, for example, it says who is true of voice, victorious. Uh, in some instances, you may see the word justified, and that's it. So it'll be Senebimni, justified, instead of who is true of voice. And the idea, in gist, the idea behind that is that a lot of people are familiar with the judgment scene of the Apd Ssr, or so-called Book of the Dead, where you have the judgment scene where you have the scales of ma'at, and the person's heart is being weighed against the feather. Well, that judgment scene, once you go through judgment and you are judged favorably, you're considered victorious or justified, because you've actually been scrutinized and critiqued. Your actions, your behavior during your life has been critiqued and scrutinized, and you have triumphed over that scrutiny. So that's why some people translate the word or phrase. Let me go back. This last phrase here, as you see, ma'a-xrw, which literally means true of voice, but some people will translate that as saying victorious or justified because of that. So just to give another idea of like differences in the translation. So so there's no need to really argue very heavily about these slight differences in translations if people have an understanding of how this process works and everything. So that's pretty much it for what we have to show. Here's the artifact again. Steps, and mind you, these steps are immutable. All 4 steps are done by everybody. The speed that you do the steps will change, because the more you do this, the faster you'll be, and the better you'll be at it. But these 4 steps are done regardless. And so we've covered our purpose. So our purpose was to show an example of how this is done, and we did just that. Does anybody else have any comments or anything that they want to address or point out?
Yeah, I mean this was a good presentation, and I like how the brother Senebimni, he definitely explained that sign list very well. I mean, he did a hell of a job on the sign list, so I just want to give him props on that.
Yeah, excellent.
I would also just like to point out that we're not just showing this to tell people that that it can be read and all that, but also to demonstrate that there are steps that are done and there's a method to do it. Because sometimes you get people who probably might just post up stuff and say that, okay, they give you a translation, and they might end up saying if there's errors in the translation and you ask about the errors, and they might be like, oh, I just did it from the top of my head, and stuff like that. But we just this is just to show that there are steps to doing this, and it's important to understand the method of transliteration, transliterating. Yeah, that it is important to learn how to transliterate, because that is one thing that always stays the same across the board. So when you do that, you can explain how you came about to your translation. So I hope that people that are watching kind of just understand that there is a method, and to be accurate, you have to stick to this method, this kind of method.
Excellent. That's a very good point, because even in Ancient Kemet, there was a high regard and emphasis placed on correct method. And there's a phrase that's prominent called tep hesed, which means, the word tep means the head or the beginning of something, or the best part of something. And then hesed is where even the Arab speaking community gets the word hesed as well, and it means to count or to calculate, and it deals with methodology. So tep hesed as a phrase means correct method or the best method, and this was emphasized and pushed in Kemet. So in following in those footsteps, this is what the scientific community is based upon. You know, science is based on methodology. So the science, this is no different. So these methods are very important, and it's definitely all about method, because applying a correct method, then you'll come out with the most likely accurate conclusion. You know how you say garbage in, garbage out. Well, the same is true in reverse. You know, correct method in, correct conclusion out, and that's basically the principle behind it. So that's a very good point that we have to definitely keep in mind. Anything else by anybody?
Yeah, I just want to say, when dealing, with transliterating and translating, you're gonna have to have some patience. I mean, if you don't have any patience, you're not gonna go far with this. You're gonna have to be determined, because I know it takes a lot of work. That's why I'm saying about patience. I mean, starting out, you may start out taking a glyph and trying to transliterate it and translate it, which it may take you, for me, example, it took me when I first started out, it was taking me like 6 and 7 hours, and I was getting frustrated, and at times I wanted to just say the heck with it, but I was determined to get it. So you're gonna have to have patience, and the more that you practice, the quicker your translation and translation and transliteration and translation will become less time consuming. Less time consuming, where you won't be taking up 5 and 6 hours. So just try to stay determined. Don't give up, and please have patience.
Okay, Nnqt, that's excellent. I appreciate that. That's important. Patience, like you said, patience. And I want to emphasize discipline. I think that we tend to take discipline for granted, as a whole, us. And we need to get back to discipline. And even the very word teach, the very word for instruction, the very word for teacher and teaching and student or pupil in the ancient Egyptian language of Rani Kemet is the word sabait or sibait, depending on how people pronounce it. And within that word, I don't have it ready to show, but if you were to look that word and look at the hieroglyphic signs or the Sesh Medew Netcher of that word, you will see a determinative of a man holding a stick, and this will convey the idea of discipline, to actually shape or mold someone's character, or to give instructions to someone can tend to be a coercive act, to bend and mold and bang people into shape. It goes into raising your children. Sometimes your children get out of line. You have to kind of let them know what time it is. You know, all of us grew up. You had to go outside and get the switch or get the belt, get the little get the slipper. Depends on where you're from. But at some point in time, your parents discipline you, and it's through that discipline. And even in the other communities, the Christian community, they have sayings. You spare the rod, you spoil the child. So we know about this concept. So discipline is definitely important, and it extends from childhood. In adulthood, where discipline is applied, is simply being patient, as Son Kofi said, but also allowing the methodology to guide you. Instead of you going wild and haphazardly doing things any which way and being all over the place, scatterbrained and so on and so forth, it's best to allow the methodology to be your disciplinary person. So I would like to definitely stress the discipline, because once discipline is abused or ignored, then it gives birth to misinformation, wrong information, pseudo information, and then it gives birth to the behavior that we call microwave research or microwave scholarship, where people are just very quick and just looking up things and not being thorough and rigorous in their studies. But I would also like, as you can see on the screen, to let everyone know that we do offer a beginner's course. A full beginner's course is 12 weeks long, meeting once a week for 2 hours every week for 12 weeks. And I'm the instructor for this particular course. And it's basically a complimentary course with the book, A Beginner's Introduction to mdw Netcher. And I guarantee that if you take the course and you walk through the book, that you will be able to transliterate and translate basic inscriptions, just similar to the ones we've done, and even more longer ones. This one was short for the sake of time, but the same principle can be applied to a long inscription or even an entire text, such as the so-called Book of the Dead. You can use the same principles all across the board. This method is applied at all times. But a course is offered, and as well as flashcards. The flashcards that you see on the screen are for what we call the monoliterals. Monoliterals are those signs that represent single consonants, and it's very important to memorize those. As Sonetonica spoke about phonetic complements. These phonetic complements will be your monoliterals, and once you memorize the monoliterals, then you know what those are, and then you'll know what signs aren't, and then what the signs that are not monoliterals, then you can pretty much figure out that they are either biliterals or triliterals, which are signs that represent 2 consonants and 3 consonants respectively. But like I said, all of this stuff is taught inside of the course, and by the end of the course, the conclusion of the course, you will be able to transliterate and translate. And everyone who is a part of the Seshew mdw Netcher has either taken the course or has shown proficiency in the beginner's level by taking a certification exam. So this course is certified. It does offer a certification, and the certification is to show that you are proficient and competent at a beginner's level with these tools and how to use these tools. So, and it's available at mdw-nTr.com, as you see on the screen, mdw-nTr.com. So with that, I'm pretty much don't have anything else to say. Anybody else have any closing words or any other comments that I may have missed?
Yeah, I just want to say, when it comes to dealing with longer text, we actually do have parts of the part Hnqt broke down. We do have plate 4A, 4B, and the other night we was working on another one. So we break down longer text. We just ain't put it out yet. We haven't put it out yet, but we do have a lot of work in the back pocket. So please be waiting on it. Subscribe to the page. Subscribe to the Facebook page. Don't be afraid to comment on there. Don't be afraid to post pictures on there. we may critique it, but we're gonna do it in a respectful manner. We're gonna do it with correct method, like he said earlier. So don't be afraid to write nothing on the Facebook page. I mean, and we're all students of Saber Wujau, so I mean, the proof is in the pudding right here. He told you to take the course, get the book. We're all proof of it. I mean, last year none of us knew how to do this. This year we're all doing this. We're making YouTube pages about it. I mean, we got a Facebook group, so I mean, it can be done. So that's all I wanted to say with my closing remarks.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, we're all learning. I'm still learning, even though I teach the beginners course. I've been teaching the beginners course for about 4 years now, but I'm still learning. And coming very, very soon will be an intermediate level course dealing with grammar. You know, grammar is very, very briefly touched on in a beginner's course inside the book. Chapter 7 of the book is covers some basic grammar points, but I will be publishing a book on a full exposition on the grammar and offering a course to go along with that. And that's going to be a kind of like an intense course because, you know, in a beginner's level, it's 12 weeks for 2 hours a piece, but for the grammar, it may be a lot longer and a little bit more intense because there's a lot of information to cover. But as I said, you know, this is an ongoing learning process. There's new data that comes with, you know, with this territory of dealing with the ancient Egyptian culture or ancient Kemet culture, because new information is being discovered, and you have a lot of actual African scholarship that's being introduced into the academic world, that's actually reinterpreting and making things a little bit more accurate in terms of Egyptology. So no longer do we have to rely on early or the late 1800s or early 1900s Egyptological books such as E.A. Wallace Budge or all the other early Egyptologists. Now we have new data. We have the African school, so-called African school of Egyptology, where we can actually see the Egyptian phenomena through the lens of an African worldview, and we can actually compare Kemet with living African traditions, because, you know, Kemet is in Africa. That's something that, you know, some people, you know, we kind of get tricked into believing that it's not in Africa, but Kemet is very African. The culture, the traditions are very African, and you can actually see them still practiced today. You can actually still hear the language being spoken today in its related forms. You know, there's a lot of African languages that are related to ancient Egyptian, as they say. Even Coptic, which they say is the last stage of the ancient Egyptian language, that particular language is even still spoken today. So it's an ongoing learning process. But you know, me myself, I personally enjoy helping people to learn what I've already learned and then walk with me in learning even more. So, you know, I just offer it as a service to help other people out, because if I can do it, I look at it this way: if I can learn it, then anybody can learn it, because I'm not any special. You know, I wasn't born you know, any special than anybody else. It's just like, as we said before, it takes discipline and time and dedication to just study and practice, because as you said, Satep, there's a lot of stuff that are worked on that, you know, we will be making available for everyone to view. But this should be an ongoing practice, and you know, I always encourage people to even after you take the course and learn, to continue to transliterate and translate on a weekly basis at the very least. So find a picture on Google, or, you know, Google some pictures from ancient Egypt, and there's an abundance of them. You know, just pick them, download them, and then take your time, transliterate, translate them. At least do one a week. You know, one or more a week, and that's what we do. That's what you all have done. And so this is what I guess Divine Words Wednesdays will be. to actually show some of those things that are done on a weekly basis. So with that, does anybody else have anything to say? I can't see.
I just want to say one more thing. The brother Christopher knows he's not here right now. He's a part of the group, and the Tibu special shout out to them. They are members of the group, and they wasn't able to make it tonight, but they are valid members of the group and contribute a whole lot. So special shout out to them tonight.
Okay, yeah, definitely, and also, son Antoine. I'm not sure if he's here. I can't see the panel, but if he's not here, then to include him as well. And and you just brought something to my attention as well. Seshew Medew Netcher is open for everybody, but the qualifications to become a member of the group is to show proficiency at a beginner's level. That's the only requirement. Whether you take the course with me interactively, or with the book, or even through someone else's course, because we have Dr. Apd Ssr, who is my personal teacher that I learned from years ago. You have Benochi Montgomery, and then you also have Mfundishi, also teaches courses as well. So it's not a matter of only taking a course with me to be involved with the Seshew Medew Netcher, but the only requirement that we do ask is that you take a certification exam to actually display or demonstrate that you have proficiency at a beginner's level. So with that in mind, the group is open to everyone who actually fulfills that requirement. So we would like to have more members and expand. And as a matter of fact, there are I do have a class going on now that's going to be wrapping up very, very soon, and hopefully with everyone passing the final exam and the certification exam, then they will be able to also be counted in the number with the Seshew Medew Netcher. So I just wanted to say that as well. But if there's no other comments, we can I would like to say Shemim Hotep, which is a phrase for departure. The word Shem means to leave or to exit, and then M is means in or by, and Hotep is peace. It actually means an offering, but by extension it means peace. And there was a lot of debate about the word Hotep, but the conclusion is that the word Hotep itself has to deal with offering, but it means peace by extension, because when you offer something to someone, you are you're bringing about a state of stillness, a state of rest, a state of comfort, a state of being content. And when a person is content, when a person is comfortable, and when a person is resting, they're considered to be said at peace. So this is why peace is also part of the definition of Hotep. So Shemim Hotep means, may you depart in peace. So with that, I will say Shemim Hotep, and we'll see you all next week, next Divine Words Wednesday.
Shemim Hotep.